never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion. Got my statement, and I'm reading it slow so I can understand it fully. Appreciate my standing, go out of this world and right on time. Oh, never in my life have I seen the sky light up like this. I'm far away from Earth and I wanna know if you exist. Mission control, do you read me? Send me my coordinates lately. Mission control, am I drifting? Tie me to someone who will love me, yeah. Wait, I think I'll last a bit long.
Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. I've got some thoughts on Nick Saban retiring coming up here in a few minutes. We're also going to talk some NFL playoffs. But first, were you depressed yesterday? And I know that sounds like a random, out of the blue question, but really it's not. According to statistics, it has been proven that January the 15th, which was yesterday, is the most depressing, saddest day of the year for almost everybody. They claim that for those that still make New Year's resolutions, by January the 15th, those are usually, most of the time, out the window. And by January the 15th, everybody has finally, fully, completely gotten over the Thanksgiving break and the Christmas break and the New Year's break, and you realize that vacation time is over with, days off is over with, PTO time's over with, family time is over with, and it's back to the normal, everyday, regular routine with whatever your job is. So January the 15th has been proven to be the saddest day of the year. So if you were sad or depressed or lonely or irritated yesterday, you are not alone. It seems like everybody is depressed on January the 15th. Let's talk some college basketball for a minute. We have not talked about college basketball in a couple of weeks, but now we're in the middle of January, so everybody is now in conference play. Most teams have now played 5 or 6 conference games. Plus, not only that, last week Purdue got beat and Houston got beat. So we have a new number 1 team this week in the world of college basketball, and that is the UConn Huskies, followed by Purdue, Kansas, North Carolina, and Houston. 6 through 10 is Tennessee, Duke, Kentucky, Baylor, and the Memphis Tigers. And then we have Wisconsin, Arizona, Auburn, Illinois, and Oklahoma. 16 through 20 is Utah State, Marquette, Creighton, TCU, and BYU. And then we have Dayton, Ole Miss, Florida Atlantic, Iowa State, and Texas Tech rounding out the top 25. So believe it or not, Gonzaga is not ranked this week. First time in a while, Gonzaga has not been ranked at all. And I will not discuss or talk about or mention at all the late NFL wildcard game last night, because I know a lot of people have to go to bed because they've got to work the next morning and they cannot stay up till 11 or 11:30 and watch the game. Not only that, but a lot of people also watch Monday Night Raw. So I'll talk about that game coming up sometime later on in the week. But we were supposed to have a couple of games on Saturday, but the Bills and Steelers game was moved to yesterday afternoon before the Eagles and Bucks game because of weather in the area. So altogether, still had 6 playoff games, but 2 yesterday instead of just the Eagles and the Bucks. We also had the Bills and the Steelers, but the Texans dominated the Browns 45-14. C.J. Stroud is quickly turning the Texans into a threat. In a couple years, they're going to be really tough to beat. The Chiefs beat the Dolphins 26-7. The Packers embarrassed the Cowboys 48-32. But I'll go ahead and tell you, the game was not that close. It was 27-0 before you could blink. The best game of the weekend, the Lions beat the Rams by 1 point, 24-23. And then in the early game yesterday, the Bills beat the Steelers 31-17. I knew the Lions-Rams game was going to be good because if you recall, just a couple of years ago, they had a quarterback swap where Jared Goff goes from the Rams to the Lions, and Matthew Stafford goes from the Lions to the Rams. And both quarterbacks wanted to prove to their former team that they made a mistake in getting rid of them. And it was a very competitive game. And it's funny because when Jared Goff played for the Rams, I thought he was a disappointment. He never lived up to the hype. But he's actually played very good football with Detroit. And now that my Dolphins are out of the playoffs, I hope the Super Bowl is the Lions and the Texans. Now, it won't be, but it doesn't mean that I can't want it to be. That would be the shock of the century if the Super Bowl was the Detroit Lions and the Houston Texans. But the Cowboys were a disappointment. Again, it's funny to me how everybody blames it on Dak Prescott. Now, am I a Dak fan? Absolutely not. Do I think Dak is overrated? Yes, I do. He gets all the fame and all the glory because he plays for America's team. Now, if you look at Dak's numbers from the game Sunday, he had 403 passing yards with 3 touchdowns. He also had 2 interceptions, but he threw the ball 60 times. So if you throw the ball 60 times, you should have a bunch of passing yards. But most of those yards came late in the game. As I said, Green Bay was up 27-0 before you could blink. And when you're down by 4 scores, you have to throw the ball every single time to try to catch up. So if you did not watch the game or only watched part of the game, you look at the stats and say, oh, well, Dak done pretty good. No. All those yards and touchdowns came in garbage time. So Dak likes to show up after the game is over with and put up huge stats and look like he had a great game. And the reality of it is he didn't. But the Cowboys aren't mentioning that their defense was putrid. They're blaming it all on Dak Prescott. And even though I'm not a Dak fan, I don't think Dak plays defense. And the Cowboys' defense was atrocious. The Green Bay Packers' offense was average at best all year long. And they had 27 points like they were out there with elementary school kids. So the Cowboys' defense could not have been any worse. But I do think Dak is back next year. But after that, I'm honestly, really, truly not sure because the talent they have, they should be winning, and they're not. Tony Romo, in my opinion, was a much better quarterback than Dak Prescott is. But when Romo was there, the Cowboys didn't have any talent, so they weren't going to win. Now they have the talent, and they just don't win. And of course, as I said, we'll talk about the Eagles and the Bucks coming up sometime later on this week. And I said yesterday I'd have some thoughts about Nick Saban coming up sometime later on in the week. Well, today is that day. And of course, Nick Saban retired last week, and it was all you heard about for about 3 days. They've already hired the next coach, and of course, it's caused a trickle down effect. And we'll talk more about that coming up sometime later on this winter or spring when I talk about all the head coaching job changes in the world of college football. But it's funny because Nick Saban is 72 years old, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, he's retiring. I guess the man is supposed to fall over dead coaching football. I'm not really sure why people are surprised he's retiring. He's old. Maybe he doesn't want to coach till he falls over dead. Maybe he wants to retire and actually spend some time with his family while he's still got his wits about him and still in good physical condition. Now, I've mentioned numerous times here on the channel that I personally think he wanted to retire about 2 or 3 years ago. I think once he got close to 70, he was ready to hang it up. But we know that Nick Saban likes to win, and he was trying to stick around and win one more national championship and go out on top. And I get that. I understand that. But after a while, you got to forget about that and just say, okay, I'm done. Because what if you keep coming back and you reach 80 and you still waiting for one more title? Are you going to keep coaching? So eventually, even though you want to win one more, you just got to say, forget about that. I'm done. Now, of course, Reggie Bush came out, I think it was Friday of last week, and said that the reason why he's retiring is because Bama used to pay all their elite talent, and that's why they were so good. But now with the NIL stuff going around, Bama can no longer get all the elite players. They get outbid on some players, and Nick Saban doesn't like the idea of being outbid by other schools. And I'm not saying Reggie Bush is right or wrong, but there comes a time when a guy at 72 years old has to sit back and say, you know what? I just don't want to do this anymore. I just can't figure out why folks are surprised about it. It's not like he's 32 or 42. The man is 72 years old. He's way past the age of being able to retire and call it a career and go to the house, which is what he chose to do. And there is nothing wrong with that. You don't have to be Bobby Bowden. You don't have to be Joe Paterno, where you coach for so long that by the time you retire, you have no idea what day of the week it is. You ain't got to coach that long. If you're old enough to retire and you still have good physical health and you still got your wits about you, there's nothing wrong with going to the house and spending some time with the family. But for some reason, people were so surprised he finally hung it up. College football was around before Nick Saban, and college football will be around after Nick Saban. It ain't like Nick Saban built college football. He didn't. Hopefully he'll take a couple of years off and then come back and work with the NCAA doing something behind the scenes, and he can try to hopefully sort out all this NIL stuff, which has completely changed the game of college football in a very short amount of time. Any thoughts on any of this, please feel free to let me know. Homes for Our Troops is a publicly funded 501c nonprofit organization that builds and donates specially adapted custom homes nationwide for severely injured post 9/11 veterans. Since the 2004 inception, nearly 90 cents of every dollar spent has gone directly to our program services for veterans. Visit at hfotusa.org. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. My buddy wants to get a nose job and asked me which one I liked the most, but I didn't answer. After all, you can pick your friends, you can pick your nose, but you can't pick your friend's nose. And that does it for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.